Hello and welcome to the Savage Movie Night Podcast. Today we are continuing to talk all about the 2010 Darren Aronofsky classic Black Swan. I'm your always seeing pictures of myself laughing maniacally at me from their creepy collage on the wall I keep for myself, host Adam. Joining me, as always, is my writing messages on mirrors from their subconscious to her conscious co-host Kristen. Hi, Kristen.
Hey, Adam, how's it going?
Good. I realized that's kind of, I might have, speaking of subconscious to conscious, I might have subconsciously stole that joke a bit. Stephen Wright, a very funny comedian, stand-up comedian, has a joke in one of his specials about, and he's very deadpan with these kind of non sequitur jokes that he tells. And I'd like to get a baby monitor from my subconscious to my conscious so I can know what the hell I'm thinking.
It does sound familiar. You could have been inspired.
Yes. Sort of like Aronofsky was maybe inspired by some stuff that he didn't realize. Anyway, and of course, the show would not be complete without our Rolling on Molly with Bucky Barnes co-host Rob. Hi, Rob.
Hey, Adam. How you doing?
Good. Glad to have you both back on the show. Glad to be talking, more about the movie today. But in part one, we talked about some projects that almost happened, but didn't quite get made. And we've talked even more about those in the past, some with William Friedkin, some, in the Dune episode, and I think maybe even some in the Herzog episode and a few others. But do either of you have a favorite almost happened movie that you wish did actually happen?
Yeah, so I discovered that Luca Guadagnino, who did, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing his name right, but Call Me By Your Name, he did Challengers and a lot of those big ones lately. I found out that he was supposed to do a remake of Lord of the Flies in 2019, but it never made it out of development. It was still in the script stage, and nothing's come of it since then. And I feel like that would be very interesting. I would be very interested to see a Lord of the Flies by that guy.
Yeah, no, that would have been very interesting.
He has a very unique film style.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Rob, anything on your end?
No, not at all. I can't think of any.
Well, I'll make up for that because, in addition to a few I thought of when I initially came up with this idea, I looked up and got reminded of a few others. So first is one we did talk about on the show, Jodorowsky's Dune is one that just sounded so bonkers and out there and insane that I really wish I could have seen that. Frank Miller, who we talked about in part one, was a writer, credited writer on RoboCop 2 and RoboCop 3, and neither film really fully captured what he was trying to do with those. In fact, RoboCop 3 went so badly for him that he quit Hollywood for 15 years or something. So, which kind of tells you something. So I would have liked to see his vision for RoboCop executed properly. It seemed pretty cool. And then a couple others that I got reminded of, looking at some. There was the Tim Burton Superman with Nick Cage called Superman Lives that almost went into production. There are even stills of Nick Cage in the Superman outfit with long hair and stuff that would have been very interesting to see. This would have been Tim Burton. This would have been in the mid '90s. So Tim Burton, just post Batman, entering a different superhero movie. And I also have a personal connection because at the time they were talking about potentially filming in the Cincinnati area. Which was a big deal. So that would have been cool if it had happened. And then I saw George Miller at one point, in 2017 or so, was connected to do a Justice League movie. Or no, maybe this was more like 2007. Sorry. It was around the time Dark Knight, and that's why part of why it got canceled was they didn't want competing versions of Batman. But George Miller doing a take on the Justice League would have been very interesting. George Miller, of course, is the visionary director behind the Mad Max series and Babe and many others. But it also might have meant we maybe didn't get Mad Max Fury Road. So I'd probably take that handoff. And then finally, um, one of the projects Orson Welles was talking about doing immediately post Citizen Kane, before they realized it didn't quite do as well as they'd hoped, and he no longer had the blank check like he did for uh, Citizen Kane, and the head of the studio was fired and stuff. They were talking about doing the life and times of Jesus, kind of shot like a Western with no dialogue, which would have just been bonkers again. So I kind of would have liked to see that as well.
I don't even know if I'd want to see that. No dialogue, and it's just all about Jesus for probably 2 hours or something. In a Western. Yeah, I don't really know about that. I mean, I would maybe see a clip from it, but I don't know if I'd commit to a whole film.
Yeah.
Well, we did have one with the original dialogue, Armenian, right?
Yeah, well, and apparently they're working on a sequel for that. The less said, the better.
Now, are all these movies that you describe, are these truly like were about to be made, or was it just bait to see how people would respond to it, so they could figure out whether or not they were going to greenline the project for real or not?
The ones I described were all ones like Hodoworsky's Dune. We talked about, how extensive, how far that got in the process. They spent millions of dollars in pre-production, in our episode 5 on Dune. For the Justice League one with George Miller, I didn't look a ton into it, but they cast people who were already training for their roles. So it seemed to get fairly along in pre-production before they pulled it, because they didn't want brand confusion with the two different Batmans. Then, like I said, the Tim Burton, Nick Cage Superman got to the point they were doing screen tests and scouting locations and getting ready to roll cameras. So like they had agreements in place and money was spent, on that as well. And then, for the Orson Welles' Life and Times of Jesus, they were scouting locations for that as well. I first heard of that project we talked last episode about the wonderful movie RKO 281. Where with starring Liev Schreiber, about the making, that is somewhat fictionalized version of the making of Citizen Kane. And there's a great scene, in the diner of Schreiber, excited as Wells, excitedly talking about the life and times of Jesus, with storyboards and only to realize that they're not going to get to make the movie because of the lack of success for Citizen Kane. But that that's also a fictionalized version. So from what I've seen, they did get to at least scouting locations with that one. For the RoboCop movies I mentioned, obviously Miller's ideas got incorporated to certain degrees into two different movies where he is a credited writer, but clearly not in the way he envisioned, to the point, like I said, he left Hollywood for a long time. He did do a comic book version of his ideas, but it's still not quite the same. Today, we are going to learn why the Wolverine was nearly very different, if maybe God should have let Noah drown, and most importantly, why showgirls and burlesque are here, because today we are continuing to talk all about Darren Aronofsky's 2010 classic Black Swan. But first, a word from our sponsor. Today's sponsor is No Regrets, the music and spirit of Billie Holiday, an in-depth 13-episode radio and live streaming series celebrating Billie Holiday's extraordinary musical legacy. The program explores her early life, groundbreaking singing style, and the powerful impact of Strange Fruit on the civil rights movement. It is produced by the award-winning Steve Robinson and written by NEA Jazz Grandmaster and host of Jazzology, Willard Jenkins. No Regret is narrated by Rhonda Hamilton. The series features interviews with Angela Davis, Cassandra Wilson, Beth Roars, Andromeda Toure, Phil Schaap, Dan Morgenstern, and many more. All episodes of No Regrets, the music and spirit of Billie Holiday, are now ready for you to stream on savagecontent.com/no-regrets. That's savagecontent.com/no-regrets. This was part one of our deep dive into the 2010 Darren Aronofsky classic Black Swan. If you haven't checked it out yet, definitely recommend pausing this and giving it a listen. But just in case you don't, or if you just need a refresher, in part one, we talked about Darren Aronofsky and how his career progressed before starting the movie. We also talked about how the movie developed from a vague idea about a project set in the world of ballet to finding a script set in the off-Broadway world and converting it to meet his needs, casting, filming, and much more. We also started going through the plot of the film itself. We met Nina Sayers, played by Natalie Portman, a ballerina at the New York Ballet, looking to break through to the top spot. She is pushed by her ambitious mother, Erica, played by Barbara Hershey, an ex-ballerina herself. When auditioning for the lead in Swan Lake, she nails the White Swan part but can't properly embody the Black Swan to the director's liking. The director is played by Vincent Gallo. At home, she is comforted by her mother, and that is where we left off. We also saw our first glimpses of Mila Kunis's character as well, and just at the moment, for whatever reason, I'm blanking on what her character's name is. Lily, yes. We also saw Lily make her appearance, kind of barging in and also throwing off Erica's game as she's trying to audition. Yeah.
Nina, not Erica. Erica's the mother.
Sorry. Words are bad today.
All in the name.
All right. Well, so with that, Kristen, take us back into the plot.
Yes. So as Adam said, Nina cannot get the role that she wants because she's been pretty much raised to do this White Swan part, and the Black Swan part is just out of her element. But her mom at home encourages her to ask the director, Thomas, to reconsider. So that's what Nina does. Next day, she goes to his office, but he tells her that he's already chosen someone. And when she tries to leave, he's surprised that she didn't put up more of a fight for the part. And so they have this talk about the importance of letting go, losing oneself in a part, and that it's not always about perfection. And then Thomas does something insane and just decides he's going to force himself onto Nina and kiss her. And Nina, despite being this innocent thing, she reacts negatively to his advances and bites him and runs out of the office. And so she's thinking, okay, I'm not going to get the part. And then I just bit the director, things are not looking good for me. But then she is surprised to find that she actually has received the lead role. And so the first thing she does is go into the bathroom stall to call her mom and let her know. And when she comes out, someone has written the word whore on the bathroom mirror. At home, she notices a rash growing on her back as well. So we start to see little elements of stress forming on her. And then also there is this moment at the ballet company where Nina is watching Lily rehearse with the other dancers. And Thomas comes up behind her and is complimenting Lily's imprecise, effortless movements that show that she's not faking it. And Nina is also fascinated by her because Lily has this physical resemblance to Nina. They have kind of similar looks, similar body shapes and kind of similar stories. But Lily has this uninhibited quality that Nina lacks, this ability to let go and just kind of have fun. I guess like it's kind of like mean to say, but like because she's so structured, it's hard for her to just do moves flow like with the flow. She has to have it with some structure.
Yeah, well, we've all seen the contrast in those archetypes in the past. Very rigid, organized, structured person versus the free-flowing, person, and that's, it's that yin and yang, which they are definitely trying to do. Not just with color palettes, uh, uh, for both characters and how they dress, um, but personality types, and just also then fitting with the themes and ideas of the film.
Yeah, and what I was going to say was that you can also already see here is Thomas trying to pit them against each other, and like is trying to like inspire Nina to embody the part that she's supposed to, but also being like, look at this person who can do this thing that you cannot do. And it's like adding to the pressure that Nina is feeling. She's already wanting to find perfection, and now she's seeing this large imperfection in herself, or what she perceives as this large imperfection.
Yeah. But one thing to also keep in mind is, not to be too blunt about it, but throughout this whole movie, you have to question what actually happens and does not happen.
And we're not quite there yet. I think right now it's a little like, yeah, right now,
well, because I've seen it implied that, maybe something more does happen, because a lot of the other characters seem to think so, including Thomas to a certain extent seems to think more than just he kissed her and she bit him and she ran away. So that could be, I've seen it posited that might be where she truly has the break, and then from there it's, she's an unreliable narrator, essentially.
Well, yeah,
seeing...
it's for sure, because like you as a viewer don't know yet that like I would it be a spoiler to say the thing about the mirror, because like I it's one of those things where I feel like you don't know as the viewer yet that like the horror on the mirror is maybe not from somebody else.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't think it's a spoiler. I mean, I included that idea of writing messages to yourself in the opener.
Which is something that I think only is like up to interpretation. Like they
Well,
never exactly say that.
It's written in lipstick, and that last time you saw like lipstick was because she stole lipstick from Beth's room. So that's
the breadcrumbs are there.
Well, and I will say, watching the featurettes, it is Natalie Portman herself, surprisingly, who actually does the writing. And they actually rewrote it, where like she'd written it once and they were like, no, it should be more like, that looks too rigid, essentially. It should be more improvised. But so that is actually how Natalie Portman's own handwriting of how she would write horror in lipstick on a mirror. That so that helps for continuity to a certain degree, because I mean that's a lot of one of those things. Like normally, if you see something like that in a movie, you would almost think like it's a set decorator or something writing that. Like you don't necessarily think it would be the star herself. So that was kind of fun. But
now, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that was right after the. It's right when she went home after the the bathroom incident, right? When she does get home, I think there's a moment there. There's a bit of foreshadowing when she peeks into her mom's room, who has artwork everywhere, and if you guys notice, one of the pictures' eyes followed her.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, I can't remember if that happened yet or when it happened in the film, but yeah, that was definitely a creepy part.
I believe
think
that's
she was
when it
in the
happened.
studio a couple times, so yeah, there's a chance that it was like that was the first time. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and then there's like even like there was her like even early before all of this, like in some of the stuff we covered in part one. There was already like there was the scene of her on the bus on the way in, like at the very start of the movie, where she thinks she sees someone in the reflection of the window, uh, on the bus that looks like her, and then I think the scene with her walking at night, and she passes someone who looks like her, like that. I remember when watching it the second time the other day to get the ideas for the introductions. That was like that was surprisingly early in the film as well.
Yeah, and you described Nina watching Lily, because at this moment you don't know if Lily's going to be like the big antagonist, or does she have the eye on her out of jealousy, or what's going on. You're trying to they're sizing each other up maybe, and you also get exposure to a lot more of the other dancers as well. And I wanted to point out one of the dancers, whose name is Madeline. It's played by Janet Montgomery. And you might know Janet Montgomery. Our listeners may know Janet Montgomery because, well, she first gained attention for her role as Ames in the second season of the TV series Human Target. She was in 2009's The Hills Run Red. She played a lead character in the television drama Made in Jersey. Also, she played a character named Mary Sibley on the series Salem. Most recently, she was in the role of Lauren Bloom on the medical drama TV series New Amsterdam. So she's got, there's some recognition there. And there's a bunch of other dancers, too, that are kind of, seem to be familiar. And I know, Kristen, you were commenting on one of them, Galena.
Yeah, so I know that there's one people might recognize because it's like a lot of these dancers, you kind of like a blink and you miss it. You might just see them in the background, but fans of True Blood may actually recognize one of the dancers as Christina Apano. She was Morella on True Blood. That's another one that kind of hangs out in the background that people may recognize, but it's kind of like a blink and you miss it sort of thing. But good little trivia to have.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, who knows? There may have been more. I thought the movie did a
Yeah.
good job of every time you think you're going to get a chance to start peeking into someone else's, who these other dancers are, the script keeps it moving quickly. Like you keep on going right back to Nina.
Yeah, it's a very well-paced script.
Mm-hmm.
Well, for the most part, what Darren Aronofsky does, almost all of his films really, despite, whether you want to talk about similar themes or anything, most of them are character studies. Whether you're talking about Pi or The Wrestler or Black Swan or The Whale, The Fountain. You could even argue to a certain extent whether Requiem for a Dream or Mother are character studies. For the most part, the only one I would have a hard time classifying as a character study would be Noah. But
Funnily enough, the one with the name and the title is not a character study.
yeah.
Yeah, so going back further into the plot here, we are now at the Gala celebrating the new season, and Tama introduces Nina as the Swan Queen, and during the speech, Nina notices an imperfection on her hand, and she tries to remove it in the bathroom, and she peels off this long line of skin that just keeps going, and it turns out it was a hallucination, but nightmare fuel. And there's also a part where in the speech, they are talking about Beth's retirement, and why, when it comes to the part where Tama mentions that she is choosing to retire and is saying nice things about her, Beth can't stand all the BS and walks out. And so later you see her, she's really drunk and she is accusing Nina of providing sexual favors to Tama in return for the role. And Tama takes Nina back to his apartment to discuss the role, as he said. He's basically saying that's crazy, let's go and just talk about it. We'll get a drink at my apartment. And that whole discuss the role element is just full of prying questions. Do you have a boyfriend? Are you a virgin? What are your sexual preferences? And then at the end, he instructs her that she should go home to explore herself, to touch herself. And at home, her mother is surprised that she was out late and continues to baby her. She's cutting her nails while she's talking to her, helping her undress. And you're just seeing more and more of this grown woman being handled like a child. And the next day, Nina tries to embrace her sensual nature. But it's kind of hard to do that when your mom's in the room. So that really didn't go anywhere. And so that part, it's she's trying to make an attempt to understand that side of herself, but it's not necessarily working out. And then back at the company the next day, news spreads that Beth has been hit by a car. And Tomas believes that she was attempting suicide after the ordeal last night. And Nina goes to visit Beth in the hospital, and she's really distraught when she realizes that Beth has like injured legs, that it's clear she's never going to be able to dance again.
So I just want to back up for a second, back to Nina touching herself. Um, I don't. I could have sworn she was alone in the room, and then suddenly her mom was there. So I don't know if her mom was
Yeah,
really there or not.
that could have been another hallucination. You're right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Because of the guilt, the guilt of.
I think so.
yeah. Well, I thought it like showed you just her in the bed and starting to go through the process, and so you're only seeing it from a certain angle, and then she turns her head and her eyes open just a bit, and she gets startled, and that's when the camera then cuts and you see the mother in the chair, and you realize. So I agree that it still could be a hallucination because you have to question everything in this movie.
Right.
But I believe it. There's also a very plausible way that she was there the entire time.
Because she very much like babies her daughter, so she could have just been
Yeah,
there all night because she was worried about her or
yeah,
something.
I was going to say that I was still thinking that maybe her mom doesn't even exist at this point. I'm
yeah,
still thinking
That
like
was
I'm
your
not
yeah,
sure.
theory
yeah.
watching.
But I mean, it gets back to the Norman Bates School of Parenting that
Hmm.
Yes.
I could
you
see
know,
it. I could see
yeah,
that theory. That makes sense.
yeah, no,
Man, it's
totally.
like I know that Tomas, like he's such a creep. He's so creepy. Like
Yeah,
I get what he's trying to do. Like I get that he's trying to get her to tap into that side of herself. But like he's crossing a line. Like
well,
it's not a professional thing at this
oh
point.
yeah, well, because like you can barely see, he's so far over that line that you can only barely see the pretense for these discussions. And that's also clearly what it is pretense that he is, especially as they imply, that he had this relationship previously with Beth. And, now that Beth has gotten older, he's gotten less interested in her. He is moving on to the next one. You know, that basically to be the top star, he has to be in a relationship sexually interested in you, which is also where all the horror and other comments are coming from because everybody knows that about him at this point.
I was just gonna say, and it also just really shows just like the cutthroat way that the ballet world is. That youthfulness is propped up, and like
Yeah,
even getting in your late 20s means you're old in the ballet world. Like
yeah,
it's crazy. I mean, it's not just the ballet world. Obviously, it's in other things, but obviously we're talking about the ballet world, and that's the
yeah,
focus.
yeah,
But
yeah.
Well, it's funny because even though it's an easy read what Tomas is all about and his chauvinism and his predatory ways, you already get that. But what's kind of funny is that even with him, you see him, I think, one, get frustrated that it's not just me. Like, it's not just Tomas, the instigator, that she's not responding to. She just seems to be flat, like conservative, and have an inability to have this within herself. Like he's getting frustrated with just who she is. And then the second thing that I'm noticing is that I think that he also, I don't know if this is conscious or not, but I think he's also recognizing these signals that she's either too innocent or too unstable, that he needs to at times lay off a little bit. Because I don't know if you noticed, there were times that he could have pushed harder earlier and he didn't, because he was just kind of noticing things about her. And I thought whether that was intentional or not, it worked well.
It was also like during the undressing scene, after her mother spotted the rash, um, because they undress her. And so Natalie Portman's just there in her very plain, simple underwear. But, that's when they kind of have a wider shot. So you're farther back but you're seeing all of Portman's body, it's just her back to the camera. So you're not like seeing any real nudity, but that's to expose just how gaunt her body is. You're
Yeah, it's
seeing
not
her
attractive.
ribs, all, each individual part of her spinal column that, uh, there are other instances of, we mentioned, that she called her mother from the bathroom. Um, there's a lot of times Nina is in the bathroom, and there are times you just hear retching sounds occasionally. Um, they are clearly hinting at, well, not hinting, but, trying to display that the character has an eating disorder, and, that is that her shape is the result of it.
Yeah.
Now we could have mentioned this a little earlier, but who Beth is, Beth
Mhm.
McIntyre, the dancer that at the old age of what, 29 or something,
Yeah.
she's
No.
the one that's already that's being discarded. It's a pleasant surprise when I first saw her that she's played by Winona Ryder. I think we all know who Winona Ryder is, but in case you need a refresher of like why she is so popular, she's in a number of classics from the 80s and 90s: Beetlejuice, Heathers, Edward Scissorhands, Bram Stoker's Dracula. In the 90s, she went on and even got Oscar nominations for, it was for like Best Supporting Actress and Best Actress for her roles in The Age of Innocence and also Little Women. She was in other films: Reality Bites, Alien Resurrection, Girl Interrupted, and Mr. Deeds. But I think that in recent times, especially with the younger generations, they definitely know her by being the character Joyce Byers in the big Netflix TV series Stranger Things. She was
Yeah,
most recently also in the Beetlejuice follow up as well, the sequel, Beetlejuice.
yeah.
And now at this point, we've said it more than 3 times. He's coming
Yeah,
on our
yeah.
podcast.
Nice catch.
I would kill to have Michael Keaton on the show.
I would love that actually.
Yeah.
he
No,
he is so much fun in the Beetlejuice sequel. Like
yeah.
he's just having the time of his life. It's so
Well,
funny. Like it's so fun to watch.
it is, but that's also a reminder, like, because like he was in mostly comedies in the 80s, and then he got into Batman and more serious roles in the late 80s, early 90s. And so it was easy to forget he actually started as a stand-up. And so,
Yeah.
That's kind of how he based the Beetlejuice character on, of this, obnoxious, kind of bad stand-up, but
Yeah, but
uh,
we're not talking about Winona Ryder
oh,
anymore.
yeah,
So
yeah,
maybe
yeah,
we
yeah,
should
yeah.
get
No,
back
no,
on
no, no,
task
no.
for her.
Winona is so great, and this was part of her slowly reintegrating. She'd had some, like you said, she'd stepped away from acting in the early 2000s. She'd started to already make a bit of a comeback. I think A Scanner Darkly was a little before this. That's Richard
Mm-hmm.
Linklater with Keanu Reeves and Robert Downey Jr. and Woody Harrelson, based on a Philip K. Dick novel. It's one of those filmed, but it's rotoscoped animation over top of it. It's really cool. And she was in that, and then this, and then not a ton of stuff until, after this, until, that was very high profile until Stranger Things. And then it's been a real Winona renaissance, which we can appreciate.
Yeah.
Also in the party scene, you see an actor. Some fans will recognize Mark Margolis. That some fans will recognize him just from other Darren Aronofsky movies. He was in every Darren Aronofsky movie, starting with Pi up through Noah. But other people will recognize him from movies like Scarface or Ace Ventura, the first Ace Ventura movie where he played Ace Ventura's landlord. But most people will know him as Hector Salamanca, Mr. Ding Ding, the guy in the wheelchair who helps. No spoilers, but and so he was in Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul, and was just amazing, and passed away in 2023 at the age of 83. But he was a very recognizable actor, bald head.
Yeah,
And so,
definitely.
it was cool seeing him pop up. It was also funny watching the behind the scenes stuff, especially like the after the party, when around the time Nina is confronted by Beth, that's all kind of taking place. There's this very big statue behind them. And I remember during some of the behind the scenes stuff, like they were saying, like, okay, people, like even in between shots, we're not allowed to have people get too close to the statue. Like we have to maintain a certain distance, apparently.
That's crazy.
But yeah. Well, I think it was, like for legal reasons, it was like, yeah, you can shoot here, you can, have the statue in your shot, but you can't get too close.
So as the film continues, we've already said, Nina is starting to feel more pressure of wanting to be perfect for this role, but she just can't tap into the Black Swan sensuality. And she's in audition, she's in not audition, she's in practice the next day, rehearsals the next day. Thank you. And Thomas is getting really frustrated with her because she's still so stiff. She can't break into that sensuality. And so Thomas is like, all right, I'm going to take it up a notch. I'm going to force myself onto her to try to tap into that side, and just starts viciously making out with her, grabbing at her. And this interaction ends with him telling her that she has to be the one seducing instead of being seduced. And so that happens, and it's a little traumatizing, as a viewer. But and then one of the next parts of the film has Lily and Nina having a chat, where Lily is joking that Nina's hot for teacher, which upsets her, and she goes home after that. And this is really where the story, we already had some early stages, but this is kind of where the story reaches more of a turning point, where we start seeing way more hallucinations from Nina, and it becomes more obvious that they're hallucinations, and she finds more scratch marks on her back. And when she looks in the mirror, her reflection is trying to harm her and has this evil look in its eye. And then, because of that conversation that Nina and Lily had about basically what happened was that Lily had found Nina looking a little emotional after the rehearsal, and that was when she was trying to talk some smack on Thomas, and Nina was like, oh, he's just being hard on me because he cares about me, and that's why the hot for teacher thing happened. And so all of that is just context, because Nina is mad the next day because Thomas basically is like, you shouldn't be complaining to other people. You have the ultimate role. And so she's mad at Lily for going and saying anything to Thomas at all. And Lily feels kind of bad about how Nina was pissed at her about that. So she goes to the apartment to apologize, goes to Nina's apartment, and then invites her out for some drinks. And her mom is kind of like, who's at the door? Come on inside. Dinner's ready. And she's like, no, I'm talking to somebody. And she decides, you know what? Screw it. I'm going to go out with Lily and get some drinks. And so while they're out drinking, Lily offers Nina an ecstasy capsule and encourages her to live a little. And so she reluctantly accepts. They are talking with some people at the bar. She's getting a little more wasted, starts to lose time a little. 1 second she's dancing. The next she's making out with some guy. Then she tries to leave, but then Lily catches up with her. They take a taxi back to Nina's apartment. And then in the taxi, Lily's touching her, which eventually leads to sex back at the apartment. And then after Lily finishes her off, her face morphs into Nina's before a pillow is placed on her own. So very trippy sequence there. And the next morning, Nina wakes up disoriented and alone and realizes she's late for rehearsal. What a night. That whole sequence is so trippy and interesting to see. Especially because, you as a viewer, you have no idea what's happening. But at first you're convinced that this is all happening for real, And from a first watch, you're like, oh, this is great. Because I'm like, oh, I love when things get gay. That's just me. I love having the representation.
Before even that night even started, I don't even know if you want to call it trauma, but the incident with Tomas, unless I misread that, as aggressive as he was, I thought at the end she kind of was down with it, or at least opened up some feelings that she had not tapped into before, which was the setup for this night.
Yeah. No, I think there's definitely a point to that. It's also, the questioning, especially in retrospect, how much is Lily really there?
Yes.
Because you could interpret like her mom asking where she's going as not even seeing Lily. Like it's just her daughter standing in the hallway and suddenly deciding to leave, and then, how much of the rest of the night, how much of it is just her projecting that inner side of herself that she is trying to tap into, that she is the physical manifestation of the, looser, more sexual side of Nina.
Yeah, it's
And
like
then I couldn't
she's hoping that, like, by being around her, she can embrace that side that she needs to tap into.
Well,
exactly.
that's if she's really there, but if she's not, it could just be she's embracing it through, she's manifesting this from her mind as she is
This
trying
is who
to
I need to be. Yeah.
correct. And then I think Mila Kunis's performance is great, but like in part one we were talking about. Just there are a few signs that are just so 2010 of so embodying of the time period, whether it was a little bit of the clothing, the cell phones, the angel wing tattoos, which come back very importantly in the scene. You see them move via CGI during the sex scene, but also just how they play Lily's personality just screamed so 2010 coded to me. I couldn't tell you why. It just felt, like how she was joking, and just interacting in general just felt very 2010.
And maybe this is why it gave me some flashbacks to going out a lot during those years, right? And
Yeah.
I think regardless of what the years are, I think we all can relate to the idea that if somebody has mental health issues and they're on drugs and there's alcohol and flashing lights and loud music, it can lead to some situations, some like it just can be dangerous. And I had flashbacks of things that not for myself, but things that I have seen other people go through. I'm like, yep, you don't have to be mentally unstable, but you can see how that could trigger you over the edge. All those elements combined into one.
And it's like, it makes you wonder if the mom does know about that part. And that's why she's very protective of her, because she's like, you're unwell. You should not be going out and taking ecstasy.
So point of clarification, actually. She did not take ecstasy, to be technical. She took Molly, which is a combination of ecstasy and amphetamines.
Yes.
I don't really know why we need to differentiate that, but thank you.
Different thing. I mean,
drug nerds
are going to get on us. And this is from the sober person on the podcast who has never done drugs or gotten drunk in their life. So
I wonder. I don't know what you do on the weekends.
It's a little suspicious, Adam.
Right? Exactly.
Yeah.
But we still need to talk about the two guys they met at the bar. At least one of the guys.
What? You mean Bucky? So one of the guys at the bar, who the character name's Andrew, is played by Sebastian Stan, and probably most people will recognize Sebastian Stan as well as Bucky Barnes, aka the Winter Soldier in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. The whole franchise is pretty significant character, which I think he first appeared in Captain America, the First Avenger, and also obviously the miniseries of the Falcon and the Winter Soldier. I think there's more than that as well. I just don't know that universe probably as well as
we'd be here all day.
But we're just doing the highlights.
It also does mean he and Natalie Portman, they never had. I don't think they ever had any scenes together. But in like Endgame and for sure that he and Natalie Portman were in a movie together again, weirdly. Anyway, sorry. He's been in more stuff.
No. Gossip Girl, Once Upon a Time, Political Animals. In 2022, he received a critical acclaim for playing Tommy Lee in the Hulu miniseries Pam and Tommy.
Yeah, he did a great job in that.
I didn't see that one. I don't even remember. He was in The Martian and I, Tonya. I don't remember.
That's the figure skating one.
I, Tonya is the Tanya Harding biopic with Margot Robbie. He plays Margot Robbie's husband in that,
Oh,
who
okay,
helps
okay.
hire Jeff Galooly to kneecap Nancy Kerrigan.
Yes, yes. And the movie Fresh, and most recently in 2024, received a Golden Globe for Best Actor in his role as in A Different Man, and also nominated for Academy Award for Best Actor for his portrayal as a young Donald Trump in the 2024 film The Apprentice.
Yeah.
A Different Man is such a... I just watched that this year, I think in January, and it was really, really good. If you haven't checked that one out, absolutely worth checking out.
Definitely need to check that one out. Yeah, this whole sequence, like we said, though, is, where you're really starting to go, okay, what is real, what is not, what can, we really rely on. And this is, where we really are starting to push, wrap up the second act and push into the third act, the climax, which we'll get to, but that'll be like the last 20 or 30 minutes of the movie is, really that third act climax.
Yeah. And I mean, if we're talking about climax, so post-climax with all of that with Lily in the previous scene, the next day, she's like, what the heck? And goes to rehearsal the next day and sees Lily dancing as her part, like as Odile, and confronts her about the sexual encounter. And Lily's like, what? Like, I don't know what you're talking about. Like, wait, were you having like some fantasies about me? Like, we just went for drinks. Like, I don't know what you're talking about. And that, I think, like, because like if you are a person that hasn't thought that everything's suspicious, I think this is the moment that, especially if you haven't seen a lot of thriller like stuff like this is like one of the first moments where you're like, oh my God, wait, has any of this been real then? Like, what should I be, what else have I missed? What else should I have been questioning, Because it's like, after this, it's like, okay, if this is fake, what else is fake? And so, despite Lily saying like, no, this didn't happen, I don't know what you're talking about, Nina is still convinced that Lily is trying to replace her, especially after learning that Thomas has made Lily her alternate. And so Nina is trying to beg him to reconsider this because Lily is after her. But Thomas tells her to stay the course, like just keep doing what you're doing. You'll be great. She's just there just in case. And then she's unraveling, we're talking about.
Wait, real quick, by the
Unraveling.
way, the whole that Lily's after me thing, that's got to just be the paranoia of not knowing what the hell just happened the night before, because she didn't feel like that 24 hours prior.
And remember, this is also a person that she's convinced is trying to take her role and take her place. And she's very threatened by her. And so she's like, oh, she's just trying to take my role. She's trying to get me. And so, of course, everything becomes more severe from that point on.
Yes,
hallucinations, injuries. She believes she sees Lily and Thomas hooking up, which we don't really think is, I don't know if that's happening. We don't know if it's not happening. Nina visits Beth in the hospital one more time and tells her that she wanted to be perfect like her. And Beth replies that she's nothing as she stabs her face with a threader. Does that happen? Is it another hallucination? Probably, most likely. Eventually, we get to an incident in her bedroom where she believes she's transforming into Odile. And her eyes are turning red, wings sprouting from her shoulder blades. Really, really cool scene there. But we'll talk about it here in a second. There's one more section I want to talk about with just Nina growing more unhinged. And Erica, her mother.
Odile is the Black Swan.
Odile's the Black Swan, yes. She is turning into the Black Swan in that scene. And Erica, her mother, is really worried about her well-being. And she is trying to prevent her from performing on opening night by telling them she's sick. And so it's like she wakes up and then she's like, I told them you were sick. And she's like, what are you talking about? I have to go. And so she has a confrontation with her mother, very physical one, and arrives at the theater where she finds Lily is preparing to take the stage as Odette before Odile, the White Swan. And Nina convinces Thomas to allow her to take back her role. And he says, the only one getting in your way is you. Let go. As she prepares, her toes looked webbed like a swan's.
Yeah. So
lots of chaos.
Yeah. Well, so first they are right that I mean, think back to this originally started as a script called The Understudy about off Broadway, and actors. that literally all Lily is doing is being prepared as the understudy. That is a common thing in theater of all kinds, is you need to have a backup in case something happens, illness, injury, whatever, to the lead. And honestly, there's usually not just one backup. It's like an order of succession often.
Yeah.
And reminder, this is opening night. They're going into opening night, so you have to have all your ducks in order.
Or swans.
You have your
But also like when she's visiting Beth at the hospital, we saw her at the start of the movie taking lipstick from Beth's room, and you see that she'd taken all these little things over the years. And so you also start to see part of the paranoia around Lily is in some ways projection, because in some ways she was trying to become Beth by taking things and taking pieces of her life, almost like a little voodoo.
But also I think she sees where Beth is going, and that's also part of her future.
Right. And she wants what Beth had, but she doesn't want to become like Beth. And so it's all coming together, and now she's feeling guilty about having taken the stuff. Maybe in her mind she's starting to think, maybe I somehow caused this Beth's downfall by wanting it so much and trying to steal her life from her. And then the confrontation with her mother, so her mother had called her in sick and she wasn't going to let her go. Part of the reason there's a physical confrontation is the mother had taken the actual doorknob off the door, that this is an older style apartment. And so you can take the doorknob, like close and latch the door and then remove the knob so you can no longer open the door. So she had to have a confrontation with her mother to get back the knob to be able to exit.
Right.
Maybe.
But you also have her mom's discretion.
It's real, or
because I'm still questioning.
Can we rely on any of it?
Yeah. Well, the other thing I noticed with this scene is so the mother's hand is injured before the start of the scene. Like you see it in like a wrap of or like a soft cast or like a brace or something, and like it had been recently injured. And I don't remember seeing that happen before. Like I don't remember that there's a scene where the mom's hand got injured. So, but so I don't know if it was again, you're questioning what's real, what's not. Especially when things start, appear, becoming very dreamlike, where things just happen and appear and disappear. But
right.
and with the start, once we start this next sequence, that's really the third act. It's, more than 2/3 of the way into the movie, but that's really the culmination and the climax of the film.
When she's leaving the hospital, I actually thought that the way this movie was going to go was that she killed Beth. All the evidence is in multiple places, including the stuff that she brought back to Beth, that she returned, the lipsticks and all that. And I thought this was more like a thing where, in her mind, she was just kind of living her life and reacting to things that were happening to her. But in reality, she was a killer out in the loose, if you will.
It's interesting you say that, because there are elements of that kind of tie back into, when we were talking about Perfect Blue, of that idea that you were talking about. But, it's also, I thought you were expecting her to meet Joe Black, like just walk out of the hospital and get like hit by a bus or something.
Right.
I also wanted to talk about, before we get into the final act, just how you can see, who's to say if this is actually happening or not. But from what we are shown, it seems like Thomas now sees the insecurity that she has towards Lily and uses that to try to get what he wants out of her performance, to kind of feed into it. He feeds into it. He's like, okay, if this is what's going to get her there, then I'm going to continue to help feed into that insecurity, give Lily a little bit of attention, go and talk to her one-on-one, whatever I need to do to get her to embody that other side of the Swan. And
Oh yeah,
I know,
yeah.
and I
I
know
think he's
also.
proud. He's proud of his manipulations.
Oh
Definitely.
yeah, and I think it's around here in one of it's like while preparing for opening night, there is a part in the dressing room where we get to see more of like the reflection looking at her, but like she's moving, but it's not moving, and it's staring at her. Like we've seen multiple of those, but the one in the dressing room I thought was really good.
Yeah. Well, and we'll get into that even more in the next sequence. But it was also especially like the way Lily jokes with Nina about like, oh, you've got the hots for me. Like I was talking previously about like, her character just being very 2010 coded.
Mhm.
Like I'd point to that and, like this part where, at dinner where she's ordering the hamburger, specifically that, oh, here's this dancer who doesn't care, as much about dieting. She's going ahead and ordering the hamburger, and the way she interacts with the waiter and all these other things are very, idealized 2010 woman coded,
The 2010s cool girl, basically. The
Yeah,
like, yeah,
exactly.
I think
feeding
I get
that.
your point, but the whole hamburger thing, I mean, the thing that was obvious too in this film that's very a part of everyone's world, I mean, a part of these dancers' world, I guess, is bulimia.
Yeah,
Mhm.
no, exactly. No, like, but that was, it was contrasting,
Oh, right.
her.
The care of their body and everything else.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, because like earlier you'd see Natalie Portman being like, "Oh no, I can't even have like a small piece of cake," and
Right.
here's Lily, and because again, it's her lack of inhibition, is what's so attractive to Nina about her, whether that's really who Lily is, or that is just projection Nina is putting on her, or those interactions are just Nina with her mentally embodying, that side of her uninhibited side via some, sort of hallucination of Lily. That's what the character is. But at the same time, like I said, it just screams that time period to me when rewatching it.
I
Um,
also, I really, we didn't talk about in the last section, and I just thought of it now, is like the way that it's reacted to Nina thinking that they had a thing is also very 2010s, because this was still in an era where like the use of queer relationships was kind of just this like gimmick, it wasn't
uh-huh.
really presented in a positive way, not a negative way necessarily. It was more just like oh, everybody kisses someone at a party. But like, I think it's kind of
It's
sad and
hedonistic,
a
right?
disservice to Nina's character. Like, clearly there are some latent feelings there that were not expressed. Like, you
Right.
don't just have a quote lesy fantasy or whatever, how Lily said it, like about somebody if you aren't a little bit queer, like.
Hmm.
So I
Yeah,
really wish
yeah.
that had been explored more. But 2010 male director, like, I get it, it's not the focal point. But yeah, I thought that was interesting to see how it was handled in 2010, which is just kind of just like an afterthought as a gimmick thing, which
Yeah.
is
Well,
unfortunate
and
for that period.
like I said, just how Lily's character talked about it again is very much on point about like how a you would think a cool coded female character would talk about it in most other media as well. Where you're kind of joking about it, but not like in a way that's supposed to be like super derogatory. It's more supposed to be like, yeah, I'm supportive of it, but I'm also like just like, oh, what's wrong? I'm just giving you crap or whatever.
Yeah.
So anyway,
But yeah, that's an interesting element that I definitely wanted us to touch on before we get to the final act with the big moment. So we're into the ballet's second act, and Nina is distracted by a hallucination, and she loses her balance during a lift, causing the male dancer to drop her, which really pisses off Tama because everything has to be perfect. But we start to see she's embodying the role. She's out there, she's doing her thing, but she's still got these hallucinations that are keeping her from being as well-rounded as she normally is. And she returns to her dressing room, and she finds Lily preparing to play Odile and confronts her. And Lily appears to transform into a doppelganger of Nina. And the two are fighting. They break a mirror. Nina stabs her doppelganger with a shard of glass, killing her and breaking the illusion. And then she's like, oh no, I killed Lily. And she hides her body like behind a closet mirror thing and takes to the stage. And then she dances flawlessly as Odile, seemingly begins to turn into a black swan, like we as the audience were watching her transform. And it's like, it's one of those things of many things where it's like her arms are covered in feathers, but are they covered in feathers? The point is that she has fully embodied the role. And amidst a standing ovation from the audience, Nina surprises Thomas with a passionate kiss side stage. And so back in her dressing room, she puts the Odette tutu and White Swan makeup back on, but is interrupted by Lily, who congratulates Nina for her performance outside of the room. That's right, not dead. Another delusion. Nina sees the mirror is still broken, but all the other evidence of the stabbing is gone, including the body. She looks down and pulls a piece of glass from her abdomen, realizing that she stabbed herself and not Lily. Despite her injury, she dances the final act of the ballet, with blood gradually seeping through her costume. The show ends with her jumping from the set onto a hidden mattress to simulate Odette throwing herself off a cliff to die, and everyone erupts in thunderous applause, while Thomas, Lily, and other dancers gather to congratulate Nina backstage. Thomas eventually realizes that Nina is bleeding and shouts for help, asking Nina what happened. Nina calmly replies, "I felt it. Perfect. It was perfect," as the screen fades to white.
Yeah.
It is. What's going on?
Well, so one thing, like you already start to see that transition because, like with the lift going wrong, like the old Nina would have come off and like apologized and been very weepy, but she was immediately like, "Oh no, it was that guy's fault," like screw him.
She took charge, right? She stepped up.
You see the change immediately,
right. And then
because her dancing gets better too. Like she's nailing her part. All the parts after that, she just nails.
Right. And then with where she hit the body, I actually think it was a bathroom attached to. I think you see tile in that space.
Okay.
And she she puts the body in there and then closes the door, but like in her mind, obviously, as because we then see Lily isn't even dead. You start to see blood seeping under the crack, the bottom of the door. So she puts a towel up against it to try and hide that as
the
well.
Evidence.
Yeah. But I think it was, very good. And the ending, not only mirrors, we talked in part one a lot about how this is a companion. At one point, they were originally going to be one project together with this and the wrestler. And they both have similar endings for the protagonists. And it also flashes me back to, if you remember, when we were doing Gloria, and I was talking about Cassavetes' The Killing of a Chinese Bookie, and how that I thought that had influences on people like Tarantino and Aronofsky. The Wrestler and Black Swan, with how they end, is very much what I was thinking of, because, we'll just give spoilers for that movie. The main character in Killing of a Chinese Bookie is wounded in the said killing of the said Chinese bookie of the title. And, he is seen at the end of the movie standing outside the club he runs, which he was trying to save by doing a lot of this stuff, bleeding, smoking a cigarette, and you see his wound bleeding, and it's left somewhat ambiguous whether he is going to survive or not. The Wrestler, again, spoilers for that movie, but the main character, Mickey Rourke, Randy the Ram, is jumping off the top rope. He's been told earlier that if he continues to wrestle, and had temporarily retired because if he continued to wrestle, his heart was going to give out on him from the years of abuse, especially from drugs like steroids and other more recreational drugs. But he then was, hated his life not being a wrestler and kind of blew it up. And so he's, in the match, he'd been seeming to have some heart trouble. And so you go up and he's jumping off the top rope, first finishing move to end the match. And you're not quite sure if he's going to survive. And it's the same thing here with Nina, that if you really wanted to, close your eyes and click your heels and think magical thoughts, maybe they do survive. But, there's also a good chance they don't.
I feel like the fade to white is like kind of an indicator that she's dying.
Yeah.
And that's how I interpreted it.
Yeah,
What about you, Rob?
exactly. But I'm saying, like, there's nothing in the text, like, for those who wanted to say, oh, no, maybe she survived. Maybe it wasn't that bad, so that's where I was kind of going with it. That
Like you sort of know how. Okay, so you think you know how Nita ends, and that's fine, but you still are left with a lot of unresolved. Like, but what was that? What was that? And you're not necessarily mad that it wasn't resolved because you realizing that you're dealing with somebody who's mentally unstable, and you're seeing views that were partially hers, partially sort of this third party observer, and partially other characters, maybe. And I still, it's funny because when we started recording this, I took the position of thinking, I thought her mom didn't really exist, only to realize that maybe she did. But now I'm thinking maybe she never did still. And I'm thinking that, and also maybe she did kill Beth. Like, that could have been all true.
Yeah. For me, the biggest one, like, I got watching it, back the couple times I did for work on this, because, like I said in part one, I'd watched it, I'd watched it, when it originally came out, on home video. So I'd probably watched it nearly 15 years ago. And I still remembered it pretty well, but it was more, picking up on little nuances and details that, I feel pretty good that most of the interactions with Lily didn't actually happen, and it's the same thing.
Like going out at all at night, like that didn't even happen.
I'm thinking they
think she went
definitely. I
out,
think
but
they
I
did
don't think
drinks.
Lily was there with her.
I think the burger thing happened. I think like burger and drinks. I think the second portion of the evening never happened. That's my opinion, at least.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, to me, I think it's just in the text that that she definitely didn't come back to the apartment.
Oh yeah, that definitely didn't happen. But yeah, because like I think it's like at the next time, like Lily does say like we just got drinks, or whatever. Like we just got dinner.
Well, no, she says like we went out and had fun. Like I think Lily, but like to me, even that interaction with Lily is open to did she actually talk to the real Lily or the hallucination Lily in my mind. But anyway, but like let's say it's the real Lily, and she acknowledges they even got fun. Went out, had drinks. Went out partying kind of after that, and but she went home with one of the dudes.
Yeah. Which also didn't happen, but yeah. I think like overall.
No. I mean Nina went home with one of the dudes. I meant Lily went home.
Well, I think but whatever. It doesn't matter. It's all not real anyway.
Yeah. Well, so one cool thing though, just with that whole sequence from start to finish, is like when Nina goes out with Lily. Nina is in this white coat and mostly white outfit, and Lily is in mostly black. And at one point, Lily tells Nina, like, "Oh, you should change. Here, I have a spare top. I never know where I'm going to end up in the morning. Ha ha ha. Wink, wink. Aren't we bros?" And so then Nina goes into puts the top on, and it's just, a kind of sheer top over, and she's got like a white camisole kind of thing underneath it, but, it's like a kind of more sheer tank top, but it's black. So, it's again, that motif of black and white swan, black swan, the inner, inhibition coming out and all that, coming together.
Good one. Yeah. That one passed me. Good one.
Yeah, there are tons of moments like that they've got throughout, but they're really good. And I mean, the whole performance is stunning, and just like you can see, like just the lengths that people go for their art. She lived and died for her art, man. Like she's like, I want to be the Black Swan, and I will do whatever it takes, even if I have to stab myself to do it. Like, and she did. And
her actual acting was really, really well. Like her facial expressions, and that's funny because it like she's attractive, she's pretty, but she also gives the reasons why men won't talk to an attractive woman look. Like she looks like she's troubled. She got issues. Yes.
Yeah. But overall, I thought it was magnificent. Like if we're going by the timeline of Aronofsky's work, at this point. I've liked every one of the films he's made up to this point. We'll see in the aftermath if that continues. But this was highly praised, and I thought it deserved every bit of the praise.
Yeah, I would give it like a 4 out of 5. I think I always toggle between like a 4 and a 4.5. But yeah, I think it's such a solid film, so captivating, really interesting to watch her grow and change throughout, because it also can serve as there's so many themes about just like growing up and awakening of yourself and like becoming more mature as one grows. So I think there's a lot to explore, and I think they did a really good job with it.
Yeah.
I know that when I saw her taking the bus, and it just, I've mentioned this with a few other things that we've talked about, a few other movies, but I took the public transportation at a pretty young age, and I ever since I was really young, I've always kind of been fascinated by people watching, and just kind of like that person sitting next to you or across from you or down the other end, like what's going on in their life that day. And it's so wild to think that about her. And when you're watching this, because little do you know that it goes beyond maybe not having a good day, that she might not even be in reality. So it's just a whole, that's really cool.
We'll talk about maybe someone's having a bad day. You never know who someone might be and what they're going through. Rob, we might need to do the movie Falling Down at some point.
Yes.
Especially since that's more LA based where you are now.
Yeah, I haven't seen it in a long time.
Yeah. Well, everything ties together. That's director Joel Schumacher, who was also, we made fun of Batman and Robin in part 1. He directed that. But yeah, no, it was really good. Just really, glad, I got the chance to watch it and, explore, Darren Aronofsky and, a lot of the other stuff he's done.
Oh, and if you couldn't tell already, this is not really the movie to watch with kids nearby.
Yeah.
There's some uncomfortable moments here.
Yeah, and I mean, because it's definitely borderline horror at points, which is of course why I tend to gravitate towards it, because I love horror movies. But yeah, it's like it definitely has some horrific moments, some bloodshed.
Yeah, well, and
the lesbian scene is pretty there.
And the self-discovery scene is another one. Whether you're a parent or you don't, as a parent, you don't necessarily want to watch with your children. As a child of even an older child, whether teens or full-on adult, we've all been there. Those movies where either you didn't remember that scene was there, or you didn't know because you never seen the movie before, and that scene that makes you be like, okay, this is awkward that I'm watching this with my parent, or parents or whoever, and you're like, this would be one of those movies, folks. So
not family night.
Yeah. But anything else from you guys as we wrap it up?
No, I think we're good.
Yeah, no, I didn't give it a star rating. I guess I would agree with the 4 out of 5, maybe somewhere between a 3.5 and a 4, just because it's not exactly my thing, but it was better than I thought. So
yeah, no, absolutely. Well, so that was the movie and our thoughts. But what did the far off distant world of 2010 think of it? Well, it originally opened in very limited release on December 3rd, 2010. Limited in this case meaning 18 theaters. But it killed it in those 18 theaters, grossing $1,443,809 for the weekend. In just 18 theaters, that's a per screen average of $80,212. So is that good? It was the second highest per screen average of all of 2010, behind The King's Speech, and was the highest per screen average in the history of Fox Searchlight, and still ranks as the 21st highest per screen average ever. It expanded to 90 theaters in its second weekend and 959 in its third weekend. It went on to gross over 100 million in the US and over 300 million worldwide. Remember in part 1, we were talking about part of the budgeting. They lowered, the budget negotiations, and where they finally came in, at the, I think it was like $13 million budget figure, was because they didn't think the movie would be able to meet the wrestlers' domestic total of like $26 million and, $44 million overall. And so, kind of missed that one by just a little bit. So it was a massive hit at the box office. But what did critics think of it? It was a massive hit with them as well, earning an 85% on Rotten Tomatoes and a 79 out of 100 on Metacritic. It was on 22 different major top and end of year lists, just the ones that were on Wikipedia alone. It was nominated for 188 different awards, winning 61 of them. These nominations included 5 Academy Award nominations for editing, best cinematography, best director, best picture, and best actress, with the only win coming for Natalie Portman in best actress. There are some criticism of the film for the portrayals of the ballet world, with some feeling it was overly cliched. Words are fun. And others criticized the film as only slightly more upmarket version of cheesy movies like Showgirls or Burlesque. There was also controversy over similarities between the film and Perfect Blue, as we kind of talked about in part 1 a little bit and a little earlier in our discussion. Many point to the heroine's breakdown being mirrored by the subject matter of the piece she is performing in, along with specific shots and character beats. This, along with the homage shot in Requiem for a Dream, led to some heated conversations on the topic in the years since, most of which is cooled off as times passed. Aronofsky, for his part, has kind of gone back and forth, but mostly has denied any intentional similarities, mostly chalking it up to that baby monitor between the subconscious and the conscious, essentially.
Yeah, it's weird because it's like in some interviews he's like, yeah, I was not inspired by Perfect Blue. And then in other ones he's like, well, I wanted to do what Perfect Blue did, but in my own way, make it my own. And then it's like, what's the truth then? Like, what did you change your story? Like, it's very odd because it's very clear that there are similarities, but I think the people that are like, oh, this is a carbon copy is it's simply not true. Well, they're very similar, but one of them is external manipulation and a manager's obsession and all of that. And then of course, this one is very much an internal desire to be perfect. And obviously the character Mina in Perfect Blue also desires to be perfect. But I feel like the manipulations are happening elsewhere versus Nina's is very internal. And she's putting all her pressure on herself.
While she may be having, a lot of the internal hallucinations and other issues, it turns out there's an external force pushing the situation in Perfect Blue. I had first become aware of the issue probably through a Cracked article not long after Black Swan came out. And in typical Cracked in 2010's internet fashion, it was under a listicle title of movies you won't believe are total ripoffs, which is just the hyperbolic nature of, especially the internet at that time, but, the internet overall. And, they weren't seriously trying to impugn or Aronofsky's integrity. It was more just, pointing it out. And so that's where I remembered it. And just, because I'm still, stuck in those times at points, that's where I was jokingly, pushing you about so we're going to have to talk about Perfect Blue. When you mentioned we wanted to do this movie. And so that made me also then watch Perfect Blue. And, I definitely see it, and I've seen some of the shots people say are, pulled from Perfect Blue. I don't see quite as, it's I kind of see it. Some are okay, yeah. And the Requiem for a Dream shot that is very clear. But some of the ones they referenced for Black Swan were that feels like a little bit of a reach. But overall, like I said, I tend to be more in the middle. There may be reasons he is obfuscating the amount. It was he was truly consciously inspired by it, but I could also see, because he is also, the script is very much pulling from all these other sources as
Right.
well, that we talked about in part one, whether it was The Double, Dostoevsky's The Double, Roman Polanski's The Tenant, All About Eve, hence also the similarities to Showgirls and Burlesque, other films, which Burlesque actually came out in the same year as Black Swan, but other films that kind of pulled their plot line from All About Eve as well. But this, so I think, it was a combination of those, but I don't think, it was truly rip off or like, oh man, they stole it. I don't even think it's quite as bad as like the Simba, Kimba Lion King situation, but, that's just me.
I think the negative feedback that compared it to Showgirls is way off, because those two movies are in two different ends of the spectrum. They're no.
Well, we've been talking about a lot of RoboCop and a little bit of Showgirls in these past two episodes, and just a spoiler look ahead. Don't be surprised if we have to talk about them even more when we get to June. So I will be able to give you, because I have seen Showgirls, but it has been a very long time. So I will, because of what we will be covering in June, I will most likely be rewatching it at some point. So I will be able to tell you. But I do know Rob, there are some beats, again, because it's pulling from the All About Eve, like where if you're looking at like Naomi, she starts, kind of looking up to Gina Gershon's character, whose name I do not remember at this time. And then she kind of starts, slowly trying to take her place, and, even to the point of sabotaging her and hurting her knee, only to become disillusioned and tossed out, so there are, some similarities I can see, but, that gets, again, one isn't even ripping off the other, but it's, they're pulling from some of the same sources, and then it becomes, like they said, even the critics acknowledge this is a more upmarket, more tastefully done, but, that it's still the same basic, story, at least to them. But anyway, and Rob, have you ever seen Burlesque?
Excuse me?
That's the Cher, Christina
Aguilera.
movie. Yeah.
Oh, no.
My mom loves that movie.
It's all right. I've had a couple lady friends recommend that over the years. So that's how I've seen it. Yeah. Not the worst thing in the world.
Yeah, my mom loves it.
Yeah. All right. Well, and I do just want to say, I definitely think Portman's, Best Actress Award win, definitely justified, definitely earned it, glad she has that. All right. Well, following the massive success of Black Swan, Aronofsky would briefly flirt with joining the Wolverine. Ultimately, that project would be helmed by James Mangold and lead directly to the critically acclaimed follow-up from Mangold and Jackman, Logan. Instead, Darren went all in on an idea he had had for years, a retelling of the story of Noah's Ark from the Bible. Using his new clout and box office success, he was able to secure somewhere between $125 and $160 million for the project. Russell Crowe would end up starring as the titular Ark builder, with Jennifer Connelly once again collaborating with Aronofsky as Noah's wife, and Emma Watson also joining the cast. The film, released in 2014, would go on to make nearly $360 million at the box office and was overall well received by critics. In 2017, Aronofsky returned to smaller productions with Mother, budgeted at $30 million, a psychological horror allegory with ties to the tales of creation in Genesis. It starred Jennifer Lawrence, Javier Bardem, Ed Harris, and Michelle Pfeiffer. It made over $44 million at the box office and was mostly well received by critics, but the general public didn't seem to care for the film at all, giving it an F on CinemaScore. Next, Aronofsky went even smaller with the intimate The Whale, starring Brendan Fraser. Budgeted at $3 million, it would make over $57 million and win sweeping praise and earn Fraser the Oscar for Best Actor. He currently has his next film, Caught Stealing, starring Austin Butler and Zoe Kravitz, amongst many others, scheduled for release in August of 2025. There have also been recent reports, as of this recording, via Variety, that he may sign up to helm a remake of the Stephen King classic, Cujo. In his personal life, to close out the Rachel Weisz relationship, shortly before the release of Black Swan in November 2010, they jointly announced that they had been separated for months. After the breakup, Weisz would meet and marry Daniel Craig, with whom she now shares a daughter. Aronofsky briefly dated Jennifer Lawrence around the time of Mother, but mostly keeps his relationships private. And I don't love talking about people's personal lives in these. It's just, especially here, since Weisz ended up collaborating with him in a movie, in part because of their relationship, because it was last minute, I felt like I had to include it, and then you have to include the follow-up. And as we'll get into with Natalie Portman, her personal life kind of is kind of related to this. But so sorry about all that.
Yeah, so what I was going to say was that it's so funny because I think a lot of these types of stories that have religious allegory tend to either go over people's heads or they hate that it has a religious allegory, you know? And I love that kind of stuff. I think it's so fascinating to watch, to find out that there's some kind of element like that. Not even always religious, just some kind of some kind of fantasy element or like folklore retelling that you don't realize is a retelling. I think all of that's so interesting. And so I love Mother, even though like there are a lot of people who it's like they've watched it one time and they're like, that's enough. I don't need to see that ever again. And for me, like I think why it works so well for me is because when you watch a lot of stressful horror movies, thriller movies, and if there's a movie that makes you feel something, it sticks with you. And that one makes you feel something. You are stressed. It is anxiety, the movie, throughout the whole 2-hour runtime.
Like, so much good use of dream logic. Mm-hmm. Like it just very much feels like dreams we've been in, you know, where something happens and then like you walk into the next room, you know, like I don't want to over explain or give too much away, but it is very much, with how it transitions between story beats and stuff, is very much dream logic in the best way possible. But also incredibly anxiety inducing. Also, I think some of it, like some people think it was maybe down to marketing and some other factors, less so than the movie itself might have been why they turn off, because Noah, you know, was much better received by most audiences and did much better at the box office, even though it is heavily religiously influenced, but not necessarily a strictly faithful retelling of the story. But in my opinion, that you know, they should have just let him drown, because I did not like that movie. And that was one I'd seen in theaters at the time of its release and didn't care for it then. And I thought maybe revisiting it, just like when I revisited The Fountain, I found myself giving a reassessment. Instead, I ended up going through the exact same pattern of, I watched like the first hour or so of it. It's like, oh man, I love this. And, you know, so especially watching it the second time, I was thinking, oh, maybe Past Me was wrong. And then you get into the last like hour plus or whatever it is, the rest of the movie, and it just keeps going and refusing to end and getting worse and worse. And, you know, by the end of it, you just hate it. And, you know, but, you know, so if you do watch it, maybe just turn it off after like an hour or so. You know.
And don't let the F for Mother deter you if you are interested at all, especially for Jennifer Lawrence's performance alone. Listen.
And The Whale was fantastic. I, you know, again, Brendan, loved seeing him get that Oscar win for that, you know, even though those awards aren't super important. But, you know, I literally was, you know, tearing up a couple times during that movie. You know, highly recommend if you've never seen that, giving that a watch.
All right.
Yeah. And Kristen, what do you think of Aronofsky potentially tackling Cujo?
It could be interesting. I mean, because they haven't really done anything with it since like the 80s one, or whatever they made the
Right.
movie.
Yeah. No, it's the
So,
80s.
but honestly, I'm kind of over Stephen King remakes. Like, I think we've had enough. Like, we've done a lot lately, and I feel like it's just we might need to take a little break. I would appreciate a break, actually, because it's like sometimes the remakes are good, but honestly, like we've got too many remakes, sequels, requels. It's just, can we get something new, please?
Well, I was going to say, like, especially if you just want to focus on Stephen King, he has a ton of stuff that's never been adapted, let alone never been. I mean, outside of never been, you could argue never been adapted well. So, I mean, let's leave Cujo alone. It was adapted fairly well the first time.
Right.
Let's either focus on the stuff, because he also just keeps writing. He will never stop. And so, let's just focus on the stuff that's either never been touched or was done but is so bad, or was in name only. Natalie Portman won numerous awards for her performance in addition to the Oscar mentioned. She will go on to star in films like Annihilation and May December, and would also portray Jane Foster in several MCU movies, as we kind of discussed earlier with Sebastian Stan. He also began a relationship with Benjamin Miliped, the choreographer of Black Swan, who also portrayed her dance partner, as we spoke about in part 1. The couple had 2 children, a son born in 2011 and a daughter born in 2017. They wed in 2012. When Miliped began working as the director of dance at the Paris Opera Ballet, the family moved to Paris. In early 2024, the couple confirmed their divorce after reports of infidelity by Miliped swirled the year before that the couple refused to address. She currently has a movie with director Guy Ritchie called The Fountain of Youth in post-production, and another called The Gallerist, co-starring Jenna Ortega, also in post-production. Mila Kunis has been in movies like Ted, Oz the Great and Powerful, and the Bad Moms movies since Black Swan. She also has continued to voice Meg Griffin on the never-ending The Family Guy, except for that brief period when it didn't end in the early 2000s, and appeared on the revival/sequel series That 70s Show along with her real-life husband Ashton Kutcher. She is currently supposed to be in Wake Up Dead Man, the latest in the Knives Out series, currently in post-production.
I think you meant that 90s show, not 70s. She started in 70s, but then appeared.
Yeah. No, the revival was that 90s show. That is what is written.
Got it.
Even if my brain and tongue did not allow me to say that. So,
and she's like very briefly in it, like 1 episode or 2 episodes, like not as much as like the woman who plays Donna. Like she appears more in the series. But anyway, very interesting little revival that Netflix canned, even though it was actually kind of finding its footing and getting good, which is a bummer.
Yeah. Well, I mean, as much as, we were talking offline about, like, I do like shows to keep it tight and not wear out their welcome. One thing is, sometimes shows need to find their footing and need a chance to find an audience. I mean, like, there have been some very famous classic shows that, didn't, not only find their voice, but, find their audience until later in their run. I mean, like Cheers was one of the bottom ranked shows in its first season, like one of the worst ranked of all TV. I think it was like 73 out of 75 or something, which also shows you how few shows were out. But, they gave it patience, and, eventually it was, number 1, years later, and, or, even, things that were never smash ratings hits that still found an audience, like Parks and Rec or Community, still, like a lot of times people will be like, especially like Parks and Rec, like, oh, that first season, a little rough, but once you get through that, it really knows what it is. And so,
once Ben and Chris get there, it gets really good, and it just kicks off from there.
Yeah, but
that's in the second season.
But that's saying, like canceling a show after, such a short time, whether it's, that, as Netflix and a lot of the other streamers have a habit of doing, especially when the seasons are also so short, that, it doesn't really give them a chance to truly prove who they ever were going to be,
Right.
So, but, The Fountain of Youth and The Gallerist both sound very interesting. And of course, I'm, interested in Wake Up Dead Man, the next Knives Out movie.
I'll watch anything with Jenna Ortega. I love her. So
Yeah.
I'll be sat for that.
All right. Well, any final thoughts? That's really the end of the aftermath before we get to outros.
No, I think we ran through it all.
Agreed.
Perfect. All right. And that was what 2010 and the present thought of the film. And you've already heard what we think, but we want to know what you think. Tell us all the things we got right, all the things we got totally wrong, and everything in between. You can do that in the comments if the platform you listen to us allows comments. If not, you can do that on social media. We are at Savage Movie Night on Instagram and Facebook. Follow us there to stay up to date on the latest with the show and drop in the comments to share your thoughts. Now that we've won the part at the cost of our sanity, only to maybe, possibly, most likely die at peace with the performance of a lifetime, we must now look at what's next. And next, we have to take a personal journey into the past and look at growing up in 1970s Brooklyn, as we are talking all about the 1994 Spike Lee joint, Crooklyn. Crooklyn is available to rent or buy on Apple, Amazon, and Fandango at home if that's your thing. It's also available on DVD and Blu-ray if you're more into physical media. But however you get it, watch it, come right back here next month as we talk all about it. Thanks so much to our editor, Javi, and the entire Savage Content team. Thanks so much to my co-hosts, Rob and Kristen. Thanks so much to our sponsor, No Regrets, the spirit and music of Billie Holiday. And most importantly, thanks so much to all of you for listening. Please give us 5 stars and leave us a review wherever you get your podcasts. If you're watching on YouTube, give us a like, a follow, ring the bell, drop into the comments, all the good YouTube things. I've been your host, Adam, and we'll see you next time on the Savage Movie Night Podcast.